Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ag Commodity Corner Plus podcast. It's October the 10th, 2025, and this is week 29. Mo, what's the topic for this week's podcast?
Yeah, so this week's topic is Let's Not Make U.S. Soybeans Great Again. What a title. Sorry, guys. I don't want to be a doom and gloom this week, but it does not look good heading into year end. We'll get into it here with the presentation. Let's look at the summary for the closing quotes. And you can see corn, beans closed lower on the day, unfortunately. Oats traded to new lows intraday. I believe that's also a new low on the weekly close. Canola closed higher, but it did also end up lower. Chicago, and I'm not surprised that the wheat futures have traded to new lows, but they did. We've been talking about how wheat futures have at least another 50 cents lower in risk. Cotton does not look good for cotton producers in the South. Disappointing in the hogs, down for the week after a bullish hogs and pigs report. But, you could also suggest that seasonals kick in this time of the year. So we'll see. And then we've got live cattle up 7, feeders up 31 on the week. I tell you, when you're in a bull market, it's just never ends sometimes. And cattle is one of those bull markets. We've got a bull market in stocks too, as well as Bitcoin. Now, we sold off today because of that news. You guys have probably all heard it, but we'll get into it here with Trump and Z. But Bitcoin also traded, so the stocks and Bitcoin traded to new all-time intraday weekly highs until today's little sell-off. Crude oil, diving. We've talked about this, been spot on with this. Gold, new record highs. Silver's joining the party, although it didn't close at highs for the week. It was at new record highs during the week, intra-weekly. U.S. dollar gaining some strength. Canadian dollar a little bit weaker because of that strength in the U.S. dollar. And then the euro was slightly higher. So let's start off with the big news, Avinash.
So in a big disappointment to the market, today U.S. President Trump threatened to hike tariffs on Chinese exports and cancel his much-awaited meeting with Chinese Premier Xi. Trump was due to meet Xi in about 3 weeks' time in South Korea for their summit, but he complained on social media about what he characterized as China's plan to hold the global economy hostage after China dramatically expanded its rare earth minerals export controls this week. So China dominates the market in those rare earth elements, and those are critical for U.S. tech manufacturing.
We needed this for that commodity market to improve. I probably rank this more important than maybe a drop in yields in the 2025 U.S. harvest. But nonetheless, I'm typically not a very pessimistic person. I was hopeful that perhaps we could get a breakthrough, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And we're afraid that this could last for months. And I'm afraid that on November 10th, Trump's going to just basically go back to the old trade war, which is 145% on tariffs for China. So it's not looking good. But, we still got time, and maybe we get some headline news that changes this, but it doesn't give the funds a reason to go long the ag commodities.
More headlines, and we are in that U.S. government shutdown period, which is in its 10th day and threatens to break the previous record, the infamous record from Trump's first term of 35 days. And now we've got, as Trump had alluded to, he would take this opportunity to trim the governmental workforce. As of now, the education department in the U.S. is among the agencies hit the hardest by layoffs. When Trump took office earlier in the year, There had been 4,100 employees in the department, and currently it's been trimmed down to 2,500. The federal health workers were also being fired as of this week.
After 10 days, it does not look like the Democrats and Republicans are anywhere near solving this. Here's my take on this. What if? So we might not get a trade deal by year end. That's a risk. What if the U.S. government shutdown lasts longer than most people thought? The longest was 2018 at 35 days. Do you remember Doge? Do you remember Elon Musk, who left because he got too political? I think Trump's going to take time to reduce waste in the government. And I think this could last a lot longer than most people think. And if it does, guess what? We didn't get an October crop report from the USDA, and now the November crop report's in jeopardy. And if we don't get some idea of what this dry finish and disease is doing to yields, I have a funny feeling that the funds are just going to drift grain futures lower into year end.
Moving on with that U.S. governmental shutdown, we did not get the October WASDE crop report. The USDA monthly reports are important for the market because all of us read it word by word. They are more or less like how investors read the Fed's wording. If we do not get a November crop report, markets will drift lower.
Yeah, unfortunately, the USDA is gospel truth. These funds read every word the USDA says. It's like Abhinesh just said, when we're watching US Fed, we watch for that wording, that tone, whether they're dovish or hawkish, that sort of thing. So it's important. And if we don't get the November crop report, again, it's strike two. And I think futures could easily slide lower into year end.
And even if we get it more, do we have a risk that USDA could slow walk their expected yield reductions?
No question. I mean, they did it last year. They could do it again this year.
News that the U.S. farmer bailout will be approved after the U.S. government shutdown is next. The approved U.S. $12 to $13 billion in the bailout could be delayed. The U.S. bailout is on hold until we get that reopening.
This is a Band-Aid. Look, the trade was thinking, well, maybe we don't have to sell bushels. Maybe we can improve basis because we can delay the selling of bushels because we have some payments. But this could backfire. Again, I'm concerned that the U.S. government remains shut down, that this bailout money doesn't get approved until it's reopened. And so what's the farmer going to do between now and year end? Unfortunately, I think they're going to have to puke bushels. They have to pay bills. They need some cash flow. So it's not the news that I wanted to report today.
Let's talk about that debasement trade. The debasement trade is where investors flock to safe haven assets, moving away from the global reserve currency, which has always been the US dollar, as a hedge against risk of inflation. We recently spoke about that safe haven trade where gold and other precious metals climbed to record highs. Bitcoin as well into record highs. December gold futures have climbed by about 17% since just August, with $5,000 as the next target possibly. December silver futures up about 24% since August. And is that headed to $58?
Yeah, they're talking $4,500 to $5,000 on gold. I mean, one of the biggest investors in gold has been China. Well, and again, I'm not surprised. It's an East versus West, and they're trying to create their own currency with the BRICS nations. So I think silver's joined the party late, but Bitcoin's been part of that party, and I'm not sure that's going to change anytime soon with this escalation in trade tensions with the U.S. Hey, don't forget, join the marketing club. This week we talked about what to do with November basis contracts. Should you risk? Should you fold? Should you hold? Lots of questions. And then we were comparing the 2025 AI trade with a dot-com bubble. I know a lot of people in the trade think that this thing's going to burst soon. I don't think so. It's a different animal, but if you want to read our comments and why you should be part of that AI trade, our clients not only have made money trading commodities, but also stocks. We've been a bull we've been a bull in stocks for the last 3 years. We caught the initial introduction of ChatGPT in September of 22 and the investment in NVIDIA. So check that out.
That government shutdown has affected the weekly U.S. crop progress reporting by the USDA. The U.S. harvest, by the time we reopen or otherwise for this week, U.S. harvest could be 40% complete, soybeans 50%, and winter wheat 60% planted. These are trade estimates. As of the latest, which is for this week, 29% complete is what trade is expecting versus last year at the same level of 29% for corn and 28%, which is the 5-year average. Soybean harvest expected to be 39% complete versus 44% last year.
Yeah, the U.S. harvest is average at best. It's not, falling behind, nor is it at a record pace.
Let's move over to South America and look at how their planting is going. Soybeans for Brazil is expected to be 9+% planted, which is among the fastest paces in recent history. We are still looking at an increased precipitation situation this weekend and near term, but consistent rains and coverage is an issue. The early monsoon rains showed up for Brazil and farmers took advantage of the planting, but the wet season becomes more consistent by mid-October.
This is a European model weather forecast, and you can see 14 days out. This is I believe it's October 10th. They're forecasting a lot of rain. Now, the reason why we're choosing the European model versus the American model is because the European model has been a little bit more accurate. So we'll see whether this happens or not, but if it does, then we really don't have any issues with South America at this point. Remember, funds won't start to get concerned about a South American weather scare until December.
We've been talking about this issue for quite a while now, more regarding the disease pressure on the U.S. crops, especially the corn crop. The latest farmer and expert estimates are that we could have shaved up to, between 10 to 25 bushels per acre, depending on where you are in the U.S. Midwest.
You mean 25 bushels per acre?
Yeah.
Anyways, you can see here on the map, I've tried to circle Iowa in the yellow box, and you can see that almost every county is covered with southern rust. And the latest we've heard is that even if the farmer applied 2 passes of fungicide at the right time, they're still losing 10 to 15 bushels per acre. In other words, the yield's dropping by 10 to 15. So that's how extreme southern rust has been in Iowa and southern Minnesota.
Let's, sticking with today's headlines, there were rumors that China was buying U.S. soybeans under the radar with a narrowing of soybean future spreads and basis. But after today's headlines on increased trade tensions with China, we doubt China is actually buying. It could be more about a lack of farmer selling, as farmers plan on storing both corn and soybeans, waiting for better prices and basis.
Yeah, this could be the first year where farmers are trying to store both soybeans and corn. They're set up to grow corn, to harvest corn, and to cash flow with beans. They don't like to store beans, but unfortunately with this trade war with China, it's forcing them to do that. And so there's a lot of storage bags that are in tight supply. They want to buy these storage bags as a temporary storage solution. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe it's time to just, sell the bushels, cash flow, and maybe buy some paper back on by the paper, so that you sort of eliminate some of the risk by storing with the storage bags.
The other major headlines this week was regarding the Middle East war situation in Israel. In the first stage of U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to end the 2-year war in Gaza that has rocked the Middle East, Israel and Palestinian militant group Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas reached an agreement to cease firing and exchange Israeli hostages from Palestinian inmates. This headlines looks to be bearish crude oil more. Where are we headed? Is it more of a $53 to $55 crude oil situation?
Yeah, this is definitely bearish. You can see the 3-year bear market remains intact. This is a weekly chart of WTI crude oil. I don't see how this changes anytime soon when OPEC is trying to, buy market share from the U.S. So I would not be surprised. We've been talking about this for some time. That we trade to those lows at 53, 55, and maybe trade to new lows as well.
The Brazilian President Lula asked U.S. President Donald Trump to lift the additional 50% trade tariff imposed by the U.S. government on Brazilian imports on a phone call today, this week. A potential meeting between Brazil's Lula and Trump could see the tariffs removed on beef imports from Brazil into the U.S., and this could weigh on cattle futures down the road.
Yeah, so that could maybe put a dent into these record prices in cattle, as could, a resumption of cattle from Mexico because of new world screwworm reductions. Maybe we get that fixed along the way. So, but for now, the fundamentals in cattle have not changed.
The weekly U.S. drought monitor is showing worsening drought conditions in the U.S. Midwest. All levels of drought have increased last week. D0 conditions have increased by 10%, and since last week, raising the total to 76%. Compared to 2011, you can find 30% more abnormally dry conditions. As far as the crops are concerned, corn, which has gone up from 14% to 60% in drought, and soybeans from 23% to 68% in drought versus the early August numbers.
So if we all have to wait till January for a gift from the USDA, it's going to be a long winter. But this is very concerning, and I've talked about this for years. The 89-year drought cycle, if it happens, and that's a big if, it's too early, that could save the farmer, unfortunately. I hate to say that. I don't want dry weather, because when I say dry weather, this is supposed to be worse than 2012. And some of you who experienced 2012 don't want to go back. This year, I was one of the very few lucky individuals to experience and see dead crops. I know a lot of people around North America that have never seen dead crops. I did, because of lack of moisture. This 89-year drought cycle is expected to bring not only a lack of moisture, but extreme heat. So we need to prepare for this, unfortunately, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. We'll keep you abreast of the situation, but this is much worse than 2011, and it looks bone dry through the middle of November. I know the weather models are trying to throw in some moisture. There is some, but it's not drought saving moisture. We need a flood at this point to fix those cracks. Until next week, folks, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. For those Canadian farmers that are watching and non-farmers, happy Thanksgiving weekend. I know it's Columbus Day on Monday in the U.S., so enjoy that to our U.S. watchers as well, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Take care.